Oh la la, 7 million degrees of freedom. We understand that
7,000 million degrees.
7,000 million, yes, 7,000 million degrees of freedom. And soon to be published, Angels in Black Holes, Hope, Light, and Redemption, with Russian artist Natalia Filatova. What is the most interesting for us is that you are trying to translate in different languages the famous Indian 15th century poet Kabir. And it's an interesting enterprise from the point of view of how the same message could be translated with the help of different linguistic devices. And what is even more interesting is that Professor Kumar not only translates, he has invented a notion which is very special for him, which is called transcreation, not translation, but transcreation. And we would like to hear more about that. So I am talking too much, and I leave word to Professor Sehdef Kumar. Let us greet him. Yes, please.
Thank you so much. Indeed, I'm delighted to be here. This is my first visit to Russia. And I just came for the first time last night. So it's only about 14 hours ago that I landed here. So I'm really, really very happy to be here. And I've been meaning to come to Russia for many a long year, but as sometimes happens, so waiting all these years. So I'm really delighted to be here. My two friends, Anna and Ona, the two sisters, they are good friends. They are hosting me. I'm so honored to be here with them. Just to place a certain context, I'm Indian. I have lived in India till the age of 21. Then I went to Canada to study. And then I stayed on there. That's a few years ago. And then I was a professor there, and then a professor emeritus. Now I'm returning back to India. So I'm now making India, rediscovering India. And I'm giving a talk here on 2nd of September about India in the last 100 years through another department. So it's for me, it's a discovery and rediscovery of many kinds. Just to put a perspective, Russia is 5 times the size of India in area. 5 times. India is 20% of Russian area. And Russia is the largest country in area in the world. Second largest country is Canada, which is about 3 times the size of India. And your population is only about 10% of Indian population. And
welcome to Russia.
And Canadian population is only 3%. So I often tell people, my friends in Canada, there are 33 Canadas in India in terms of population. And in terms of area, it's a huge, huge country. So it's an interesting perspective how different countries and cultures and how they use the nature and what relationships you have. So for a long time, I've been teaching environmental ethics and bioethics. And my background, as introduced, I started with nuclear physics. And one of my great heroes was Albert Einstein, who was a remarkable, of course, one of the great scientists, but also a mystical person and deeply devoted to peace. And his writings have inspired me. It is through him I discovered Sri Aurobindo. And it is through Sri Aurobindo I discovered Kabir. So Kabir is, these are 3 of my people who have influenced me greatly. And I will share with you today largely about Kabir and some of the work I've been doing about Kabir. And just to give a little introduction, I know some people are scholars of Indian philosophy and Kabir, but just to bring everybody online. Kabir is a 15th century poet and sage. And he lived near the city of Varanasi in North India, which Varanasi is the holy city of India. And he lived just outside that area. And he was an unlettered person. He did not know how to read and write. So hundreds of songs and thousands of couplets that are attributed to him, they are said to be written by him, but not written by him. They were fortunately written by some of his followers who thought that what a beautiful pieces they are. And since then, a lot of people have done research, which pieces are genuinely Kabir's, or which may not be his, or may have been added to it. And at least 100 people in India have done their PhD on Kabir, at least 100. And there are close to 200 books written about Kabir in India. So here is a man who did not know how to read and write, but he's become a subject of many, many books and articles and conferences and concerts. And he's probably the most loved and admired poet in India, even today, 500 years later. Every year, at least 4 or 5 big conferences are held on Kabir, Kabir's songs and his vision and philosophy. And if you ever come to India, just do check it out and see if maybe one of Kabir's sessions is going on. So he's a remarkable man. And one of the big debates that went on, was he Muslim or was he a Hindu? Still don't know. And his philosophy often takes references to Hindu images, very rarely to anything Muslim. But many Hindus believe that he must have been a Muslim, probably abandoned by his mother for whatever reason, and brought up as a Hindu. But he himself said, Hindu to main hu nahi, Musalman bhi nahi. I'm not a Hindu or a Muslim. I'm not a Hindu. I'm made of 5 elements, and the whole cosmos plays drama through these 5 elements. So and I will recite to you some of the pieces, he said again and again that these labels mean nothing. They mean nothing. If you're a real seeker of the truth or beauty or mystical insights, all these labels of caste and creed and religion mean nothing. And that's one reason that he's loved so much today. Everybody, we are all going through in many parts of the world, struggles with the classes and castes and this and that. And so his image becomes so much more important because he transcends these images. He says, yeah, this is beyond, this is not, truth is not wrapped in them. I'll just tell you one of the very funny ones because he's quoted so often by the members of the parliament, by politicians, by peasants, by students, by house ladies, and so on. He said, Munda Mundai Harimile. If by shaving your head, you could see the face of God, how easy it would be. You see, in Varanasi, if you have been there to the holy city of India, that's where the holy Ganges flows. There are a lot of people with long beards and shaven heads sometimes, and they pretend that they are holy people. So he made fun of it. And he made fun of it. He says, Bund mudai harimila, to sabko nahi mudai, bar bar ke mudte, phir na bekhut jaye. If by shaving your head, you could see the face of God, how easy it would be. He said, look at a sheep, how often it is shorn and how far from God it is. You see, a sheep is shorn, is taken hair off, so he will make fun of them. So he, in turn, the Pandits, the Brahmins, the upper class caste people who were highly educated, great philosophers, they made fun of him. He said, this man does not know how to read, how to write. He has never read Upanishads or Bhagavad Gita or Vedas. How can he talk of spiritual knowledge? So they ridiculed him. And he, in turn, ridiculed him. So he says, Likha likhi ki hai nahi. Are dekha dekhi ki baat. So it's not a matter of reading and writing. It's opening your eyes. That's the real truth. Likha likhi ki hai nahi, are dekha dekhi ki baat. Dulha ko dulhan mili gyo, phiki padi barat. He says it's not a matter of reading and writing. It's opening your eyes, inner eyes, the eye of imagination, the third eye, as it were. He says, look, when the bride is in the arms of her lover, who gives a damn about the wedding party or the marriage party? Said, "Likha likhi ki hai nahi, dekha dekhi ki baat. Dulha ko dulhan mili gyo, phiki padi barat." It's one of the most beautiful pieces written. I wish some of you could. You probably know Hindi or other places. When I recite my pieces in Hindi-speaking audiences in India or other places, you could see the light in their eyes. because they are some of the most beautiful poetry ever written.
I guess some words
You
in
guess,
Hindi.
yes.
Yes.
So they're some of the most beautiful words ever written in Hindi poetry. Many critics have said that he's the greatest poet of Hindi of in the last 1,000 years, even though he did not know how to read it. So this one is likha likhi ki hai nahi, dekha dekhi ki baat, dulha ko dulhan milegi, are phiki padi baat. It's not a matter of reading and writing, it's opening your eyes. That's the real truth. So when the bride is in the arms of her lover, who gives a damn about the wedding party? And then he says the same thing. Main kehta aankhan ki dekhi. I say what I've seen with my own eyes. You keep quoting the books. He's saying this to the Brahmins, to the Pandits. I say what I've seen with my own eyes. You keep quoting the books. I say he's everywhere. You keep hiding him in the scriptures. How can our paths cross? Again, very beautiful. He says, Main kehta aankhan ki dekhi. I say only what I've seen with my own eyes. Main kehta aankhan ki dekhi, tu kehta pothi ki dekhi. You keep quoting the books. I say he's everywhere. Main kehta aankhan ki dekhi, tu kehta pothi ki dekhi. Main kehta sirja bana, tu rakhe aur rijai re. I say he's everywhere, but you keep hiding him in the scriptures. How can our paths cross? So you see how provocative he is, and that's why he's so much loved today. And young people love him because he's a radical man. He challenges the orthodoxy. And again and again, he does it again and again. So Kabir's little background here, he was a julaha, he was a weaver. He was a weaver, a poor weaver. And the weaving class in India for a long time is considered almost like an untouchable, not treated very well. They're the lowest rung of the social ladder. So he's not treated very well. He's marginalized and ridiculed. They did not have education, formal education. And so in every sense, he was really socially marginalized. But, so slowly and slowly his fame grew, began to admire, see what amazing things he's saying and writing and singing. And then the myth has it, the legend has it, that when he died, he was much loved by the Muslims and the Hindus. These were the two prominent religions of India at that time, in the 15th century. There was no Christianity in India at that time. There were no Jews in India. And there are few people here and there, but really two major religions in the country at that time in the 15th century was Hindus and Muslims. And so they both loved him towards the end of his life, not earlier on, but towards the end of his life. And the legend has it that when he died, they're fighting over his body. What should we do? So the Hindus, as you know, cremate their dead. They cremate their dead, they burn their dead. And the Muslims bury their dead. They want to bury it. So they're fighting. This is our saint, our sage. We want to do last rituals according to our customs. So they're fighting, and the legend has it that when they removed the shroud, there was no body there, only a heap of flowers. And again, the legend has it that they divided the flowers. Half the flowers were buried, half were cremated. So if you go to Varanasi today, you'll see there's one place where the Muslims said that's where he was buried. And there's another place Hindus said that's where he was cremated. Because now he's much loved and much admired. But his theme throughout, I call my book called Love Songs of Kabir, because he's really speaks of love, divine love. And sometimes he makes it very personal. He says the two words that he uses called Hari, which is Hari is the Indian god's name, Hari. And then others sometimes use Ram, Ram. Now, but he says clearly, there's Rama, my Rama is not the king of Ayodhya. He's not from the Ramayana. He's not a figure, he's not a person, just a name. Because he did not worship or admire or love anything that is has tangible person, but it's an image that permeates everything. And one line, very beautiful line again. Laga lo mujhe adharon se ab, ki main bans se bansuri ban jaun. Oh my love, oh my beloved, touch me with your lips. So from a piece of bamboo, I become a flute. Now, again, this is very beautiful. In Hindi, the word bamboo is bans. And the word flute is bansuri, same word. And it plays on this word. So it literally means the rhythm of the bamboo. So amazing. When you see, we had just 2 days before I came here, we have one of the great flute players presenting his concert in Aurovil, and just Chaurasia. And it's a bamboo flute, and what amazing things he creates out of it. So he says the whole life, he says, Lagalo mujhe adharon se apne. Oh, my beloved, touch me with your lips. So from a piece of bamboo, I become a flute. That is in some ways the real spiritual journey, that we are a little flute. And if we don't know how to blow in it, how to play, it's just a piece of bamboo. But you know how to learn to blow it, and that creates amazing, mesmerizing music, extraordinary music, and which not only touches you, touches all around you. So these are wonderful lines that Kabir has. And as I said, he was a radical poet. He ridiculed all these rituals, all these things that go on in the name of religion everywhere in every country. And he said, Manka phirat yug bhaya, gayana manka phir. This again was beautiful. There's one word called manka, which has two meanings. It means something, a bead in a rosary, called manka. And it also means something belonging to the heart. Two meanings. Something, a bead in a rosary, and something belonging to the manka. And he uses it 5 times, the different meaning. And then the second word he uses again 5 times, called fair. Fair means moving the beads. It also means wrinkle in your heart, crookedness in your heart. So you use it, manaka phirat yug bhaya, gayana manaka phir, karaka manaka chandiki, manaka phir. One of the most beautiful poetry ever written in any language, as far as I can see. And again, I don't translate it, I transcreate it, because I feel poetry should not be translated. It kills it, it destroys it, because poetry has its own special arrangement of words and its own music. So it becomes literally dies. Of course, we should know literally what it means literally, but then how do you transcreate it without taking, going off completely and losing the essential part of it. So manaka phirat yug bhaya, gayana manaka phir, karaka manaka chandiki, are manaka phir. He says, for years you've been moving the beads in your hand, yet nothing has moved in your heart. For years you've been moving the beads in your hand, but nothing has moved in your heart. Oh, my friend, leave aside the beads. Open your hands, let the heart turn. So that's how I transcreated it. And as I said, I have presented Kabir in 37 countries of the world. And I often ask audiences who don't know the original, how does it come across to you? So that's, to me, is very important, that how a transcreation or translation comes across to people who don't know the original. Some of you may know that the most popular poet in USA, America, is Jalaluddin Rumi. Rumi is the most popular poet, far more than any American poet. And he's translated, if you read his translation, they're very far from the original. And they are essentially written in American English. But that's what I've seen people, there are 2,000 people attending Rumi presentations. And they admire it, love it, read it, but they don't know the original. And then the man who translated it, he does not know Persian at all, or Turkish. So my attempt has been, I know the original. It's not that I don't know the original. I know it very well. But my attempt has been to see how to capture the essence of it, and then to see how it comes across to others. And there are some Americans translators who have done it so badly, I think, rigorously, badly, literally, they kill it. They kill it. So, which is a great pity, because it has to be. Just as an example, some of you know the work of Rabindranath Tagore, the great Indian poet of the 20th century. And he was awarded Nobel Prize in 1913, more than 100 years ago. And his book was called Gitanjali. And he wrote originally in Bengali, the Indian language, Bengali, spoken in Bengal and Bangladesh. And then he translated it himself into English. Now, I don't speak Bengali, but I understand English. But I'm told by my friends who are Bengali that it's very different from the original. And he says it's a very beautiful English transcreation, but very different from the original. And he says, and in the original, it is a song. In the translation, it is poetic song, poetic, not song. You take away the rhythm of it. But it's that's what most of us know, those who don't know Bengali. So that's what I have tried to do in my translation. And now there's a big project going on in this community where I live in India called Aurovil. It has 3,200 people or so from 62 countries. And I present Kabir there quite often. So there's a lot of love for him, a lot of admiration for him. And so some people, one person came to me in one of my presentations, and she said, she was from China. She said, I would love to. I said, I so love it. And I said, most of Kabir is written in couplets, dohas, and couplets. And couplet writing is in many languages. He says couplet compositions in Chinese is very popular. He says even today, there are competitions of couplet writing. You write the first line, and the other person writes the second line. So he says very popular. So she was so taken by it. She was, I want to translate Kabir into Chinese. And now she has translated 150 couplets in Chinese. And this year we were supposed to go to China to present it, but because of COVID, it didn't happen. So I'm here in Russia instead. So, but otherwise, very great deal of interest. And same way Spanish and French and Russian and Hebrew and so on, even Esperanto. Somebody has translated in Esperanto. So the whole idea is really when we translate poetry, unless we are just wish to be just scholars essentially for our own, say where does this word come from? What does it mean? That's important for philologists, for our scholars, very important. But if you wish to share your poetry with a larger audience, then you cannot be literal. You cannot be just literal. That will destroy it, that will kill it. So you need to make a creative interpretation of it. As has happened with Tagore, has happened with Rumi, these two great poets. And so that's how I have done it and taken it to many countries. Now, Kabir, as I said, sang of love all the time. And love is in a divine love. And sometimes in a very sensuous words. Very sensuous words. And thank you so much. He says, Nainana antar avatu, Nainana antar avatu, Tehu naina japehu, Na main dekhu kisi aur ko, Na tujhe dekhan dehu. Oh, my beloved, come into my eyes. The moment you come, I'll lower my eyelids, so you won't look at another, and I will look only at you. Beautiful lines. Nainana yantar avatu, tehu naina japehu, na main dekhu kisi aur ko, na tujhe dekhan dehu. Oh, my beloved, come into my eyes. So the moment you enter, I'll lower my eyelids, so you won't look at another, and I will look only at you. And then another one, very beautiful one. Nainana ki karun kotri, putli plang bichaun. Nainana ki karun kotri, putli plang bichaun. Palakan ki chikdari ki, piya ko layun rijhaun. He say, in the pupil of my eye, say, I lay in the pupil of my eye, I lay the bridal bed. In the pupil of my eye, I will lay the bridal bed. I'll use my eyelashes like silken curtains, and there I'll endear my beloved. Nainana antaravatu, nainana yantaravatu, nainana ki karun kotri, I'll make my eyes into bridal chamber. In the pupil of my eye, I will lay the bridal bed. I'll use my eyelashes like silken curtains, and there I'll endear my beloved. So nainana ki karun kotri, putli palang bichaun, palakana ki chikdari ki, piya ko layun rijhaun, piya ko layun rijhaun. His points again and again about love, divine love, very sensuous. He says, Priyatam ko patiyan likho, I write letters to my beloved. He did not know how to write, but he says, I write letters to my beloved. He says, I write letters to my beloved as though she lived far in another land. Oh, how I forget that she lives here in my eyes, in my heart, receiving messages of my love at all times. Priyatam ko patiyan likhu, jo koi hoye videsh. I write letters to my beloved as though she lived in another land. How I forget that she lives here in my eyes, in my heart, receiving messages of my love at all times. Priyatam ko patiyan likhu, jo koi hoye videsh. Man mein, tan mein, nainan mein, tako kaha sandesh. Oh, she's receiving messages of my love at all times. Then Kabir was as I said, was a weaver. He lived at the margins of the society in the very poor circumstances. And he was a poor man all his life. He never became a full-fledged holy man, a guru or Mahatma. He was, all people came to him and he was always like this. So he would, words, he will use many images from water, from ocean of consciousness. It's really quite amazing how sometimes we don't quite, we forget it, that so much of the earth is really water. 70% almost is water. And one of the things I have done for the last many years, I give lectures on cruises, on ships, and presented Kabir on ships many times. And then we became aware that a ship is only about 30, 40 meters deep in the water, and the water is 5 kilometers deep. How little we know about the ocean, how much life goes on. So same in a way, similar way, the ocean of consciousness is incredibly deep. Even the words like subconscious, they just take a little bit on the top. What are we conscious of? What are we aware of? So he says, so he uses many words like this. He says, Herat, Herat, He Sakhi. Herat, Herat, He Sakhi. Raha Kabir Hirai. He said, I was looking for him everywhere, but to no avail. Why? Because when a drop becomes part of the ocean, who can say what is what? Have become part of the ocean. Herat, Herat, He Sakhi. Raha Kabir Hirai. Bunda Samana Samadme. Now this a drop has become part of the ocean. Who can say what is what? And then the second one is the 3 couplets together. Very beautiful, beautiful. So 3 couplets. Second couplet says, Herat, Herat, He Sakhi, Raha Kabir Hirai. I'm looking him for everywhere, but to no avail. Why? Because when the ocean becomes part of the drop, who can say what is what? Amazing. So when the ocean becomes, so Herat, Herat, He Sakhi, Raha Kabir Hirai, Samad Samana Bundme, Abakat Hira Jai. Then the third one, my next book is called Ocean in a Drop, about Kabir. So the third one, he says, when the drop becomes part of the ocean, that everybody can understand. How a drop becomes part of the ocean, that everybody understands. But how the ocean becomes part of the drop, that only a rare man can comprehend. He said, Bunda Samana Samadma, Jana and Sabakoi, how a drop becomes part of the ocean, everybody understands. Yes. So Bunda Samana Samadma, Jana and Sabakoi, Samad Samana Bundame, Buje Virla Koi, how a drop becomes part of the ocean, everybody understands. But how the ocean becomes part of the drop, that only a rare man can comprehend. So these 3 pieces, very beautiful pieces, much quoted, much talked about very often. And then Kabir again speaks of light and water and people making pottery, everything around him. Everything became holy, became sacred. Nothing was trivial, nothing was mundane. So Lali, Mere Lalati. Again, the word lal, he uses it 5 times with different meaning. Lal means red. It means lali, it means radiance. It also means child. It also means beloved. So he said, Lali mere lalaki, jita dekun tit lal, lali dekun main bhi ho gayi lal. The light of my beloved is spread everywhere. When I went searching for it, I too became part of that light. This sense of oneness is very crucial to Kabir's poetry. Oneness again. Tu karata tu bhaya mujh mein rahi na hu bari pheri bali gayi jita dekho tit tu. He said, when I call your name, I forgot my own. All I see now is you and you and you. There's a wonderful Sufi story about this. A lover comes to a beloved, knocks on the door, and she says, "Who's there?" And she says, "It's me." The door remains closed, and he wonders what happened. And he's asking a guru here and somebody there, why she did not open the door. And then a year later, he comes and knocks on the door again. She says, "Who's there?" And he says, "It's you." And the door is open. So Kabir says, "Likha tu karta tu bhaya, mujh mein rahi na hu. Mari meri lag dekhu tu." He says again, "Jab main tha tab tu nahi, ab tu hai to main nahi. Prema galayati sankari, isman do naha samahi." When I was there, your face was hidden from me. Now that I see you, I'm no more I. He says, "The path of love is much too narrow. Two cannot walk here. Only one. The path of love is much too narrow. Two cannot walk here. Only one. जब मैं था तब तू नहीं, अब तू है तो मैं नहीं. अरे प्रेम गलियति सांकरी, इसमें दो ना समाई." The path of love is much too narrow. Two cannot walk here. Only one. Then Kabir also talks about his hesitation on the spiritual path. A great deal. He's not always arrived there. He's struggling to arrive on a spiritual union. So he talks about it. He said, "Jin dhunda tin paya, gehre pani pait." The pearl is deep in the water. Dive if you seek. The pearl is deep in the water. Dive if you seek. I was a scared old woman. I just sat at the shore, empty-handed. I was so afraid of drowning. "Jin dhunda tin paya, gehre pani pait, main bodandari rahi kinare bait." I was a scared old woman. I just sat at the shore, empty-handed. So it's how many times he said, "You remain empty-handed." And he provokes and invokes people. He says, you need to be daring to go on the spiritual path. Just as like the people who are scholars, we say, you want to be a good scholar, you have to be disciplined, you've got to do this, you can't be, and you have to proper citation and proper this and proper that. So in order to have spiritual path, he says, you need to be disciplined. And he said, how to be disciplined? He says, "Kabira khada bazar mein, diye lokate ha." He says, Kabir stands on the crossroads of life with the flame of love in his hand. Only he who is ready to set his house on fire can dare to follow. House of smallness, petty-mindedness, of fear, anxiety, and so on, and ego. So, "Kabira khada bazar mein liye lukate hath, jo ghar jale apna bhi chala hai hamare saath." Only one who's ready to set his house on fire can dare to join. And so this is the kind of message he says. Then, as I said, he was a humble man, a person from a very lowly. In India, I don't know about Russia, I don't know your country very much at all. But in India, caste system has been oppressive for a long time. But still is, sadly. And there are people rebelling against it, questioning it as they should, but it has been oppressive. And yeah. Yeah, it's a pity, but that's how it has been in India. So he says again and again, "Pothi pad pad jagmua, pandit bhaya na koi." There's many a man who's read all the scriptures and books. He says, there is many a man who's read all the books and scriptures, but rarely is there a man of knowledge. To be a man of knowledge, you need to read only one word, and that word is love. Famous line, very often quoted. "Pothi pad pad jagmua, pandit bhaya na koi." Pothi pad pad jagmua, pandit bhaya na koi. Dhai akhar prem ka, padhai so pandit hoi. Only he who's learned, just one needs to learn only one word to be man of knowledge, to be person of knowledge, and that word is love. "Pothi pad pad jagmua, pandit bhaya na koi. Dhai akhar prem ka, padhai so pandit hoi." He again draws a great deal about images of pottery, weaving, and so on. So he says, I'm like a picture of a pot of clay floating in the great consciousness, or great ocean of consciousness. I'm like a pot of clay floating in the great ocean of consciousness. Suddenly, with the touch of the Guru, this clay pot is broken. And what is inside? What is outside? It's all. Kumbh mein jal hai, jal mein kumbh, bahir bhitar pani. I'm like a pot. Kumbh mein jal hai, jal mein kumbh, bahir bhitar pani. Phuta kumbh, jal jal hi samana. Yeh tat kahe gyani, yeh tat kahe gyani. Phuta kumbh, jal jal hi samana. Then again he says, Hari ras yun piya ki baki rahi na thak. So imbued am I with the love of the beloved that all my doubts are gone forever. See, they are all, everybody in a way is ridden with doubts, ambivalence, and uncertainty. What is this the right path? Is this the right way to go about it? So he says, Hari ras yun piya ki baki rahi na thak. So imbued am I with the love of the beloved that all my doubts are gone forever. A potter's bowl, once baked in the fire, is not turned into nobility. See, some potters, their pottery, so long it's clay, so long it's not baked in the fire, you can do it, mold it, change it, do anything. But once it's baked, you can't do anything. It's baked. So he said, now I'm baked. So, say, Harira Singh Yupiya, Baki Rahina Thak, Paka Kalash Kumarka, Chadiana Duji Bar, Chadiana Duji Bar. Then I'll just finish it and I'm happy to have your question answered. Any questions really, just tell you the last one is very beautiful one again. He speaks of, he said, Hari hai khandu reit mahi hati chuni na jaye. God's presence is like grains of sugar in a pile of sand. God's presence is like grains of sugar in a pile of sand. An elephant cannot pick them, but a little ant knows the way. Hari hai khandu ret mahi hati chuni na jaye. Kahe Kabir Guru bhali bujhai chinti hoy ke khai. He says, God's presence is like grains of sugar in a pile of sand. An elephant cannot pick them, but a little ant knows the way. Truth, my friends, is very subtle. Be humble to seek it. Be humble to seek it. So thank you very much. And thank you. I'll be happy to have any questions.
Thank you. Please.
What specific word he's using, Kabir, to describe this one word love? The Anubhav, the Bhakti.
It is called Bhakti, Bhakti prem. And many, as you know, the Bhakti movement is very pervasive in India. You have Neera, Chaitanya, Namdev. They're all bhakta, great bhaktas, devotion. Sometimes they have a special figure in mind, like Meera. For Meera, it was Krishna and all. But for Kabir, there was no such figure.
What the words Kabir used himself?
He uses two words again and again, sometimes called Hari and sometimes called Ram.
No, for love.
For love. Prem.
Prem.
Yeah. Prem Rasiyopya, love of beloved. Prem, the word prem. Prem is, it literally means love.
Sometimes they use bhav.
Bhav. Yeah, that bhav is emotion of love.
Mhm.
Bhav is emotion. But the word is prem ras. Prem.
Yes, any more questions?
Kumar, if I understood you right, Kabir was a great weaver of language.
Yes, he was.
And it's almost impossible to translate one weave. Well, how do you think? So there are perhaps most popular 100 poems of Kabir translated by another.
Tagore did it. Tagore, yes.
Well, what's your opinion? What's your attitude? Is it possible to understand Kabir's teaching, his thoughts, his philosophy, reading these English
It helps in a way. Me talking about it. For instance, when I speak, I gave you a 40 minutes presentation today. When I speak, I elaborate on it, take a couplet. Kabir, what Tagore did, he translated songs, not couplets. And he has many songs. And there was a big debate going on, are they really his or they somebody else's? And Tagore translated it 100 years ago, in 1914. And at that time, Tagore's English was quite a little old-fashioned English, and there are some people trying to retranslate it. I'm also doing it myself. Songs, I've translated only couplets so far, so I want to translate songs. And it's always a challenge. In my book, if you see my book, after every couplet, I have a note there, description, why I chose this way and not this way, so that I know literally what is the literal meaning and why I chose it to translate, transcreate it slightly differently. For instance, let me give you an example.
So which generation should have its own translation?
Sometimes, because some generations change fast, but some can stay for longer. I translated first time about 35 years ago, and so they are being presented in many places. Otherwise, translations has to be creative. It has to reach out. Essentially, you have to say, what is your purpose for the translation? Is it so that you only few scholars can say, this, that's the right word, that's what he meant, or your intention is to take it further, to make it as a part of a larger culture. Kabir is much loved in the country. He's recited everywhere.
It's only one step of the distance.
Yes. Yeah. So our goals should be clear. What is it? I will give you an article I wrote, written about Kabir. I presented it about 4 years ago in a black church in USA, in southern part of USA. A black church, you may or may not know, they're very segregated. In black church, you don't see any white person. Sometimes in the north part of USA, you see a black person in a white church, but not the other way around, very rarely. So there were about 300 people in the church, and one person had read my book. So he invited me to present. So I presented there for about the same time, about 40, 50 minutes. And none of them spoke Hindi at all. And so after the presentation, 3 women came to the front and to thank me. They said, Professor, we feel that Kabir could be our prophet. That I said, in a way, he belongs to everybody. He does not belong to anybody specifically. Yes, yes. So I felt it was incredible that the translation, transcreation touched people, because they are meant to reach out to people, not just for scholars. I feel that my work is not just for scholars. It has to reach out to more people. It's to students, to people who like poetry, who like music, who like to understand the great mystical thought and vision. And I have a 75-page long essay about his philosophy, and then translation, and then notes about each couplet, why this way. One very beautiful one is called Lootna hai to loot Ram naam ki loot. Lootna hai, the word loot, and somebody, American poet, had translated literally to loot, to rob. But that's not what it means. We have a Hindi word, Ash Lutna, Ananda Lutna, means rejoicing. You're having a great time, rejoicing. The word called Lutna, but literally she translated as robbing. And it really quite silly. So one, I feel, has to be careful.
I address myself to our online participants. Do you hear us? Do you see us? Because we don't see you. We don't see you. Please ask your question. Ask your questions. Don't hesitate. What?
Please.
Yeah,
absolutely.
of course.
I would like to ask about the language Kabir prepared his couplets. Because the Hindi we know now is quite modern. It's about 200 years, which from 15th century.
15 years.
Was that?
No, he spoke a very rural Hindi,
Was
very
that
dialect.
Braj?
Braj.
Which is common at that
Yeah,
area.
in that area. But even then, his language is very, even not very refined Braj, because he was not educated. And so whatever local people used, but his poetry seems to be very beautifully written, very beautifully composed. So it's quite amazing. Did he actually speak like this in everyday conversation? We're not sure. But certainly his poetry has been cleared up. Some words have been changed a bit, just like Shakespeare has been changed for modern writer. If you read Shakespeare's times, you won't understand it. Yeah, so it has been for presentation in a play, theater. We go to see Othello or King Lear and so on. We would know it's modern English, fairly modern English. So it's same way. His poems they're sung now, songs, but otherwise it's Braj Bhasha of that area. But even that, not terribly refined Braj Bhasha.
And what sources do you use for your translation?
Pardon me?
What is the sources you take for your translations?
I took it from many sources, many sources. Then I would say sometimes I write it in my note at the back saying, I'm not sure there's debate on this particular couplet, whether it really belongs to him or somebody added on to it. Because he's quoted by politicians, by people everywhere. Just like say Confucius says so and Buddha says so. I don't know how many times Buddha said so. We're not sure how many times Buddha said so or Confucius said so. So these are people who have become vox populi, they become the voice of the people. And so you add on things. So this has happened a great deal to Kabir. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it possible to listen your favorite from the favorite?
My favorite?
Yes.
2 or 3 which I like very much. The one, 2 is the sound of it, because I find he's just so wonderful with sound. Lali mere lalaki, the light of my beloved is spread everywhere. When I went searching for it, I too became part of that light. Lali mere lalaki, jit dekhu tit lal, lali dekh main bhi ho gayi lal. It's incredible immersion, great oneness, joy, rejoicing that he's really see the light, and as though you're hesitant, is real light? Is it threatening? Is it going to kill you? Is it going to? So, but he's slowly watching it, walking towards it, and suddenly you're immersed in it. And this word lal, as I said, has 5 meanings, and he uses it in a beautiful way. And then the second one was manka. This manka is also very beautiful, I find. Yeah.
Any question? Any more questions? Comments?
Sorry, say it again.
He had a teacher, right?
Did he have a teacher?
Yes.
They said Ramananda is often said to be his teacher. Ramananda, a Brahmin teacher. He speaks about Guru, but he never mentioned the name very often. Guru, let me share with you 2 very beautiful couplets about Guru. Because in Indian tradition philosophy, Guru is very important. Teacher, the person who opens the door for you. He said, Guru Gobind dono khade, kake lagu paye. My Guru and my Master, the Lord, both are standing here before me. Who shall I bow first? He said, what's the good etiquette? He says, bow before the Guru first, because it is he who has opened the door to the Master. Guru Gobind dono khade, are kake lagu paye. Who shall I bow first? He said, Guru Gobind dono khade, kake lagu paye, aur balihari is Guru ki, jo Gobind deo dikhaye. It is, he said, hail the Lord, hail the teacher. It is he who has opened the door to the Master. And then the second one, also very beautiful, about potter. Say, Guru Kumar Shicha Kumbh hai. Guru is like a potter, and a student is like a pot. He said, he beats from the outside, but he spoke from the inside. So a beautiful pot can be created. Guru Kumhar Shish Kumbh hai, gadi gadi kaadhe kot. Guru Kumhar Shish Kumbh hai, gadi gadi kaadhe kot. Antar hath sahar de, bahir mare chot. He beats from the outside, but he spoke from the inside. So a beautiful pot can be created. So these are 2 very much attributed to him. But he never names who was my real Guru. My sense is that he saw all nature all around him as his guru. That everything was teaching him.
Somewhere I read that
Baba Farid, no, he came much later. Farid much later. No, that's no, historically not right.
Я опять взываю к нашим онлайн-слушателям. Пожалуйста, включите камеры, мы вас не видим, мы хотим вас видеть. И реагируйте тоже как-то, пожалуйста. Задавайте вопросы, делайте комментарии. I asked our participants to make,
Somebody.
This is especially some Hindi from Moscow State University. Gulia, давай.
May I ask a question, please?
Yes,
How much differ the padas included in Adi Grantha and in Bijak, in subject and the form?
Not clear.
Еще раз повтори.
How differ between each other?
Differ between-
Padas included in Adi Grantha and in Bijak.
In Adi Granth, about 350 of his couplets, songs are there. It's the second largest after Guru Nanak. It's very much, and he's sung many times. I have attended many recitation in the Golden Temple in Amritsar, in many Gurudwaras in Canada, in many countries. He's much loved by the Sikhs. Yeah,
Yes, I understand it, but what is the difference between these two collections?
Oh, there is only small part. There's far more outside as well. It's not everything is in the Guru Granth Sahib. Only small, about 325 or so of his pieces are in the Guru Granth Sahib, but there are many more outside. And so, both are there. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Еще more questions, please? No? May I ask you?
Sure, please, absolutely.
Well, I feel Kabir is one of the first universalists,
Yes, yes, yes.
and his message was absolutely universal. And we know that there are two ways in India. There are two ways to God. There is a way of bhakti, of devotion, the way of knowledge, the way of yoga. And Kabir is not, generally considered as someone who proclaimed the way of bhakti.
Yes.
But his bhakti way was quite different from the normal.
Yes, yes.
Normally, the bhakti is saguna. That means that the bhakta cherishes the God with attributes,
Yes.
with image, with his surrounding and whatever is connected with this God. But Kabir was
No, he was not any of this.
he was nirguna bhakti.
Nirguna Bhakti.
And how could it be possible to be universalist and to be nirguna bhakta?
But he saw the guna in everything. That's the he said not nirguna is not Krishna, not Shiva, not Vishnu. And as I said, Meera came a little later in Rajasthan, and she adored Mirabai. She adored Krishna. And so Krishna's Bansuri, Krishna's face, Krishna's this, that. Whereas Kabir, he saw guna in everything, everywhere, he says. He says, why should I close my eyes to anything when I see God everywhere? That's how you say. You say this.
Right. It is called nirguna.
Nirguna, nirguna in guna, in everywhere. Yeah.
Sarvaguna.
Sarvaguna, that's true. That's true. That's a good way. Yes, very true. It's very special because Kabir saw it everywhere. He said, why should I go to the temples? If God is only in the temples or in mosques, where is he? What are the other places for? And he again, Kankar Pathar Jodi ke Masjid Lahi Chunaye, Taan Chadiha Mulla Bangde, Kya Behra Hua Khudai. He says to the Muslims, he said, look, they have put stones and sand and piled it together to make a beautiful mosque. And there on top, the mullah shouts the name of God. Do you think God is deaf? That's what he said. Is God deaf? Why do you have to shout his name? So he would say that. And, say, and then he says, it's all really within, and you don't have to go to the places of pilgrimage or temple or churches. And so he's he ridiculed that search is within, the inner search, knowledge. So his nirguna is sarvaguna, as you say, encompasses everything. And he said again and again, I see him everywhere. Everywhere. Yeah, very much.
Thank you very much for Kabir. But I would like to ask something about you.
Okay.
Is that possible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I was, as I said earlier on, as you introduced me, I come from physics background, nuclear physics. And I was, from my first guru, or a person who touched my heart a lot, was Albert Einstein. I was studying theory of relativity in Toronto, in Canada. And I found him not just as a great scientist, a great visionary, but a great mystic. And if you ever visit Washington, is the statue of him just outside the Academy of Sciences. And there it says underneath, towards the end of his life, he said, I know nothing. Incredible humility about him. And so it was through him that I had I studied Kabir at the age of 11, 12, and all students do in North India. It's part of our school education. But I discovered him again at the age of 36 in the mountains of Canada. I had a mystical experience. I just thought, wow, here is a man who's unlettered, uneducated, but incredible wisdom. And I was, in my article I gave you, I say about it that I was quite a well-known intellectual writer and so on. And suddenly I said, really, I know nothing on this before this man has extraordinary insights. So that's how it drew me. And I was also very much a specialist in cosmology, in physics. And I discovered that it was less than 100 years ago, we discovered what is the source of energy of the sun. We didn't know what is burning on the sun. We knew it's giving incredible heat, incredible light, and that we on the earth could not survive even for a second if it was not there. So one of the naughtiest questions in physics was, what is burning? What is burning? It's not wood, it's not oil, it's not coal. What is it? So really, it was only in 1937, less than 90 years ago, we discovered that what is burning is what is called fusion, the process of fusion. There are only two elements there, hydrogen and helium. And in the process of hydrogen atom joining together and creating helium, this process called fusion, fusing. Then according to the theory of Einstein, you have a lot of energies released. Amazing. So I often think, and then what happened? It's again a great aspect of our humanity. The first thing we do when we discover this great power, we make hydrogen bomb. Incredible. Human beings discover a new source of energy. And then what we do with it, we destroy, create a destructive force. So what has interested me, intrigued me? What is it that we can fuse in our mind, in our soul, in our heart, that can create incredible energy? That is for me the mystical insights. That there is a fusion taking place, just as it's happening on the sun. Incredible energy. And that's why the mystics say, brighter than 1,000 suns. There's the name of a book called Brighter Than Thousands. The mystical vision is brighter than 1,000 suns. So the sun, which we think, which is so crucial for us survival, and in the sight of the mystic, a great visionary like Eckhart, like William Blake, like Albert, like Sri Aurobindo and Kabir. Really, the sight is brighter than 1,000 suns. So that's how it's often.
So you think that Einstein had also a kind of mystical experience?
Very much. Some of his
And
writings.
From what of his writings or opinions you deduced?
Well, there are many pieces that talks about the greatest. He says the source of all creativity in science and art. He says is the sense of the mysterious, the mystique.
Yes,
sacred.
This everybody can say from his knowledge, but did he really had a mystical experience in the proper sense of it.
He saw it in his matter, study of matter, energy, and so on. But we can't compare it to his mystical insights with it.
Yeah, experience. It's different.
Because he would not speak.
Yeah.
But he certainly spoke of the great mystics.
And it is not a surprise for me that you, being an Indian, you open the mystic aspects in Einstein.
Yes.
This is intercultural approach.
Probably. I have shared with him about him to many scientists in USA, Canada, UK, and various conferences, and quoted him, said, and then I find that he was really deep down a great mystic. Great mystic. And his commitment to peace. And it was a great pity that it is he who wrote a letter to President Roosevelt in 1939 that maybe Hitler is going to make an atom bomb and that will destroy us all. So we should make something like this. So, and he regretted it towards the end of his life. His story of his life. A few years ago, there was a big rumor going on that he had written to his daughter many years earlier, that the word EMC squared does not stand only for energy becoming mass and velocity of light. He says, this is the love of energy, of love. Then mass, our ego is destroyed. And then what incredible energy is released. That was not, this was a fake letter. It was not real, but it was attributed to him. And people were quoting him in the churches and temples and synagogues, everywhere in the world, that look what Einstein had said, which is not a real letter.
And when did you switch from your more or less scientific universalism to the mystic universalism? Was it provoked by your experience, or it was your intellectual evolution?
It came from some sort of a mystical experience for me. Yeah, it was. I was sort of prepared.
Could you describe this experience?
Well, for me, I've been drawn to many ideas. The whole idea of what is the source of energy, and I look at the history of science. And I find it, if only we could look at it with slightly open eyes. For instance, it's only 125 years ago that we discovered X-ray, and quite by chance, in 1895 or so, 125, 27. And I said, this is amazing. That somebody, 5 years earlier, somebody said to you, I have a camera, can take a picture of the inside of your lung or kidneys. You say, this is magic, how is that possible? But that is possible, incredible. And now how it has become part of our lives, that there is something that can see through. And I feel we have an X-ray vision. A mind has a vision. We can see through many. A great mystic does that. The other day I was riding in a metro in New Delhi, and I suddenly see everybody. Now India has over 800 million phones, and everybody's talking all the time. And they're taking pictures, sound, music. And I said, amazing how people are. And I said, then I saw this crowd of people in a car, in a metro in New Delhi. And I said, wonder what seemed like empty space, what is it full of? Is there some other instrument, our heart, perhaps we can open and listen to that music? That's how I listened. It came to me like music. And that has stayed with me. It has stayed with me. I really feel what seems empty is not empty. It is full of incredible messages from the universe. And incredible messages. Music, incredible music. Music of the spheres, somebody said it. So it's really, I feel in some of the new advances in biochemistry and molecular physics and in cosmology are really revealing to us that what seems nature is not so natural. It is incredibly different. Matter is not what we thought matter is like, that is hard and so on. That is only one aspect of it. That one aspect, important aspect, but only one aspect of it. There's many other things happening. And we're discovering again in cosmology, really 99%, more than 99.999%, universe is empty. So how is that possible? What is it? Then what is it? My wife is a dancer. She's a famous Indian classical dancer. I said to her, do you know that the universe is empty? She says, yes, it makes sense. You see, if there's no emptiness, how can you dance? So it has to be empty. That Lord Shiva is dancing. He's the great Nataraja. He's the dancer. He's a cosmic dancer. Really, if we need to look at some of our things we learn in physics and in other areas of science, it's allegorical, metaphorical, and then new things. That's how it was beginning to happen. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
it has opened to us new horizons, and with this vision, being very, very thankful for you.
I'm delighted to be here.
Yes, so we finish this
Thank you.
reunion.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so much.
Well, if you want to talk to Professor, please.
Anybody?
Yeah.
Yes. Please. Yeah.
One more question.
Yes, please, please, absolutely.
Professor Kumar, what's your opinion, what's your attitude to humanity movement? Perhaps you heard about Aurovil, who tried to unite people of different cultures, people from the West and from the East. Is it possible now? Or perhaps it was the dream of the previous century, and now we are too different just to unite or to say, please, people. So you live in Canada, your mother is India, and you came in Russia, your opinion. Very interesting. Very
Yeah,
important.
there are divisions. I sometimes do get sad and disappointed that many divisions, but I look at a slightly longer perspective. There are also a lot of unifying forces. Truly, I feel they're happening in music and painting and literature. More people are reaching out to each other, learning about each other. Canada, just to give you an example, the city of Toronto, which is not a big city like Moscow, it's a city of 3 million people, but there are 80 languages are taught there.
What's
In
that?
schools, 80 languages are taught in schools. Anytime a group of 5 students want to learn a language, you want to learn Russian or Punjabi or Bengali or Tamil or Chinese, they will provide you a teacher after school hours and no charge, no fee to be paid. And oftentimes the teacher is a father or mother of one of the students. And it creates very great goodwill, feeling that everybody should be welcome. And Canada used to be called a bicultural society, French and English. Now it's not called bicultural, it's called multicultural. So people like me, Indian, Chinese, Russians are coming, many of them. People from everywhere feel that our culture, our language, our dances, our literature has equal space in the scheme of things. My wife, as I said, is the Indian dancer, and she has won many awards from Canada Council of the Arts for performing, for more research, for grants, and it's happening to more and more people. So I think Canada is a good model for it. I feel quite proud of it. They're good, moving in the right direction. Yet there are no, I'm not naive about it. There are a lot of forces of negativity, destructive forces. And, but we need to stay focused, not to lose hope. The word hope is important. Abandon all hope, all he enter here. This is the definition of hell, written by Dante. Is what is hell? He said, you lose all hope when you enter into that. So we not lose hope. Sometimes there are challenges, sometimes there are difficult challenges. But I do feel I don't want to live the way people lived 100 years ago. I think a lot of things, good things have happened. The treatment of women, children, gay people, people of different colors and castes and creeds, this was very different 100 years, not so good. So many good things have happened as well.
Thank you very much. When there is a will, there is a way.
Yes, 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 yes.
There is a will.
Yes,
Ну, давайте последний.
Okay, last question.
yes, please.
Just maybe you can explain in a nutshell, what does it mean specifically your way of translation? Is it any different from any other person who kind of like finds his own way of translating? Does it have some significance?
The people do, people have translated Kabir and other poets in other languages in different way, transcreation and say. And it's all right, no big deal. People just as people interpret a novel, a piece of literature differently in classrooms. We teach literature, we say you have a different interpretation of the same character.
So it's like translating, reading into the language.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's one need not be an apologist for it. It's this is the way I look at it. And when I present to you and other audiences, sometimes quite large audiences, I tell them, look, this is the way, this is what the original is literally, and this is how I've translated in order to reach you. And those are people, 95%, they don't understand the original, and they don't want to understand the original, but they want to see how it touches me today, 500 years later. So that's, to me, that serves a good purpose, without compromising the great poet.
Ну что, мы заканчиваем. Поблагодарим профессора Кумара. Спасибо большое.